OpenAI has just released their latest model, GPT-5, and I'm sure you may have been seeing a lot of news recently on the headlines of GPT-5 and its performance. And, after its release, there's been just like a major question of what's next? What comes after GPT-5? How exactly will AI evolve next? What is possible with AI from GPT-5? And how exactly should we prepare ourselves for this new wave of AI capabilities? That's really why I wanted to make this video, just to kind of go through and walk through just like the five kind of core frontiers that I'm personally seeing kind of emerge, right? Just based upon my own experiences from building real AI agents. So ultimately, when it comes to this video, this is definitely going to be one of those more like higher level abstract videos. What I'll say is like the key thing here is I'm really looking to like kind of give you just the frameworks upon like how exactly you should kind of look at the next wave of just kind of AI, especially when it comes to applying AI, right? And what to expect, so that really just from the right frameworks, you can take those frameworks and implement them, right? Into just your own build. So yeah, let's get right into it and let's start like really kind of breaking things down. So for the first frontier, what we have are multi-agentic systems. So what multi-agentic systems are really like systems where instead of you having just like one single like AI agent, you have a team or a swarm of like AI agents that are all working together in order to like achieve a certain end goal. The key thing here is that with multi-agentic systems, what this allows you to really be able to do is to make it so that you can kind of like break down like very large kind of objectives into small tangible pieces and have each specific agent work on that like certain tangible piece in order to like deliver on a very like narrow outcome, right? And then by combining the collective effort of all the outcomes, you're able to reach the ultimate objective, right? Very similar to how like any kind of organizational structure works, right? So really the importance of multi-agentic systems is that it allows AI to flex its capabilities beyond just like a single subset agent, and it allows it so that the AI can kind of coordinate with other AIs, right? And by this coordination, they can really like kind of make up for each other's strengths because kind of like a big thing with AI is that when it comes to handling very large objectives or tasks, right, it tends to forget, right? Or just, with this context window, it just isn't able to like pick up on those minute details, which are very important. So by breaking things up like this is how we're able to really like take advantages of those weaknesses and actually turn them into strengths. All right, so for the next frontier, what we have is context engineering. So with context engineering, pretty much what that is about how exactly you're like organizing and structuring context or data in a way where AI can be able to like just effectively use that data, right, for its outputs, right? So this is going to be very important, right, in terms of like figuring out like what data to actually like structure for the AI, and not just what data, but like how exactly to structure things. And it's like just yesterday, I was performing like a database audit on a client for an AI agent build, right? And just looking at where their database was at, they're currently hosting like a kind of video course module, right? And it's like ultimately that video course module is a database, right? And ultimately, like our goal is, looking to take just kind of like the frameworks within the video course module and turn it into a kind of database that the AI can use, right? Now, the big thing is like really figuring out the proper way in which we can go about in terms of taking those videos, right, and turning it into context, right? Turning it into just like text, right, that the AI can use But not just that, but also like how exactly do we go about in terms of formatting that text, right, and structuring that text in a very precise way so that from there, the AI, as it goes through and it uses that information, it won't get confused, and it would be able to like pull out the right information just depending on whatever inputs we send, right? So when it comes to context engineering, these are three different ways in which you could structure information, right? Like you have a vector database, which with this one, you'd be able to create a RAG agent, right? An agent that just goes through, it pulls unstructured data and it appends it to the prompt. And then from there, it takes the information, the AI processes everything together, and it gives you an output, right? And then we have a SQL agent. Now, this one right here is for more structured data where the agent pretty much will go through, perform search queries inside of the database. From those search queries, it'll pull out necessary information, right? It'll retrieve that information for you and it'll display it in a way that's like just kind of clear and concise for you as the user, right? And then we have a graph agent, which is where the AI will be able to basically see connections between different ideas. And then based on those connections and based on how they're related to each other, it will be able to go through and generate a response for you. With that, we have three different ways. Now, there's definitely way more ways in which you could go about in just kind of structuring data and information for the AI, right? Like something that's pretty cool as well is you can actually go through and you can combine different databases, right? And different like context storages so that the AI can be able to pull from each. I think the key thing here really is just on focusing like, well, what exactly is like the key end goal of this agent, right? And I think that's like the key thing because like when speaking to different business owners, right? Like I'll talk to a business owner and many times like they don't really know if they need a vector database or if they need like a SQL database. And I think this is something that's very important to know. It's like, well, what type of like kind of intelligence system do you want to build, right? Do you want to build a intelligence system where you're just like pulling information directly from a database without really any understanding, without any like synthesis or summarization or anything like that, right? Do you just want to have like a retrieval process, or do you want to have a more like semantic kind of narrative understanding for your AI where it can kind of find patterns, it can see how different ideas are connected, right? And it can have like a more like fluid memory in a sense because this is how as an AI operator, we can go through and we can kind of see like, all right, well, just based on what you're saying, most likely, you'd need a vector database with a RAG agent, or maybe, you'd even need like a hybrid architecture similar to this. So for the next frontier, that's definitely going to be making a lot of headway after GPT-5. We have model routing. Now, what model routing really is like selecting the best AI model for the task, right? For whatever task your agent is responsible for. Because at the end of the day, you have to imagine like your agent is like the kind of like body, right? Um, and the AI model is like the engine, right, of that body. So it's what like really powers things. And depending on the engine that you have for the body, right, can completely change like what type of behavior your agent has, right? So let's say you're running a task for analyzing scenes inside of a show. So you have three AI models, right? You have a Anthropic model, you have a Chat GPT model, and then you have an XAI like Grok, right? You can create a routing system where just like depending on the certain input, right, the agent can choose which model to actually like run through, right? So from here, the agent will basically decide on whether it should use Anthropic, right, or if it should use Grok for the specific task. And this is very cool because with just by simply changing the model, right, you can get a whole new behavior that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And this is definitely one of those things that you shouldn't sleep on, right? Like for sure, like you definitely want to make sure that you're not staying married to any one model or any one company, because at the end of the day, like all of these models, they're all trained on different data sets, right? And they're all kind of subtly different in just their own, I guess, like high level personalities, right? So you do want to make sure that like you are kind of testing different ones out so that like, you're not like kind of being led by a model and kind of missing out on your blind spots, right? Now, another way in which you could structure things as well, right, is instead of like having some routing system, you could use different models for different agents. So let's say for these specific agents right here, you use model one, which in this case could be ChatGPT, right? So you use ChatGPT for these two tasks, for these two separate tasks. And then for this task right here, you can use like a Grok. And then for this task right here, you can use Anthropic, right? So, as you can see, like there's different ways in which we could actually go about in doing things, right? There's integrated like routing way, and then there's a more kind of like individual model to agent way, right? And I'm sure there's even more patterns in which you can go about doing things. These are just some of the more common ones. All right, so now for the next frontier, what we have are agentic apps and autonomous agents. And this is definitely like what I would say more of a new paradigm on like how to look at using AI for just the next like wave of software that we do build, where really as we look to build newer software, right? Um, I think we're going to see a lot more like traditional apps really go from just having deterministic backends with the APIs and the database, right? That's connected to a user interface into more like agentic apps. And with agentic apps, what's going to happen is that you're going to have like your UI, right? And then from the UI, what's going to happen is that once the input is sent from the user, right, instead of things going just straight into the backend, is going to enter into like an AI inference layer. And this inference layer is pretty much where we're going to have AI be able to basically decide and choose and plan on like which kind of backend core logic in order to like call, right? Or which APIs to call, or even like using the vector database in order to enrich its responses. And this is really going to make it so that like with the next wave of apps that are being built, they are a lot more intelligent, right? They're a lot more adaptive, and they feel like really almost like co-pilots, just as how we see like GPT 4.0 was very loved by everyone and then they removed it, right? And then another just kind of paradigm would be like really just building more autonomous agents, right? So having full on agents that are pretty much connected to specific business events. And whenever a business event fires, then the agent will activate. It will run through its process and go through and just complete all the necessary tasks in order to like complete that objective, right? So this is definitely one of the more cooler ones as well. And I would say this is like the field that I'm closer in when it comes to building like the newer wave of software. But this is definitely like a very cool paradigm as well for those app developers who are looking to like really like just enhance how exactly they're building apps, right? And what's going to happen right here is we're going to see that all apps will start to kind of slowly transform into like agents, right? So far I've covered like 4 different frontiers. I hope you've liked the video up to this point. If you did, definitely like drop a like, right? Or subscribe as well. I have a lot more of these type of videos coming out. We'll even be making a lot more like technical kind of in-depth builds as well, kind of showing you how exactly these exact frameworks will look like in action. Now, for the last one, what we have are really just like emergent AI behavior. As we start to really combine just all of the different like frontiers together, such as like model routing and context engineering and multi-agentic systems, right? And as we start really like mixing and kind of matching them around, I think what's going to happen is we're going to really start to see like new behaviors start to happen with these models, right? Because now we're creating these interconnected systems, which I know kind of sounds weird, but like, you know, if you think about it, like what happens when you have these two models like interact with each other, these two models that are trained upon completely different data sets, right? Like what happens when you orchestrate them together? It's like putting in two different people from two different places in the world, right, in a room and saying, figure shit out, right? Like, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how things happen, right? Especially as we use them across just different tasks, right? Different contexts and new domains. We're going to see some really cool, like, just behaviors from the AI. So, really, as someone who's building AI agents, you know, you shouldn't really look to just like downplay the behaviors of the AI, because you know, as you if you do it correctly, you'll find that like the AI will come out with like quirks, but you'll find that those quirks are actually like emergent AI behaviors, right? And you know, if you actually like figure out ways in which you could use those quirks, you can gain like just completely new use cases for AI that weren't even possible before. So I think I think as we go on forward, we're going to start to see that those behaviors that we considered like errors from the AI will start to become just new findings, right? So I think look forward to kind of seeing how exactly that plans out. That's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully this gives you a better map on like how exactly to plan and position yourself for this coming age, right, of all of these new cool agentic systems. I do have another pretty cool video coming out upon like how exactly I'm actually using AI agents, right, personally. So stay tuned for that one and take care.